Welcome back. It's the Big Blue Banter, New York Giants football podcast. I'm Dan Schneider, joined as always my co-host Nick Velato, and I'm excited today for a multitude of things. One, we're joined by Phoenix, Nick's dog. Two, I got my favorite Giant shirt on. Get compliments for this thing every day that I wear it. It's effing sweet.
It's
it
a
was
nice
also
shirt,
very
Dan.
expensive. It was also very expensive. It's one of those like good feel material ones. I want more, and I will buy more. I'm going to buy a red one, but we're talking about like a $50 t-shirt, so it's a little bit absurd.
I'm not
spend that
spending
kind of money on
$50
something, but it's kind of worth it because I love this thing. Three, I'm excited because Nick was at training camp again, so we get live thoughts from someone with their boots on the ground. And then four, the offense finally looked pretty damn good. Trend continues, man. We're taking deep shots this year. The Brian Daboll offense likes to air it out. And finally, today, we connected on some deep shots, one to Hyatt and one to Nabers. We're going to talk about all of that and more. But before we do that, Nick, let's just get your overall thoughts from a really hot day covering the Giants at training camp.
Yeah, my first thought was it was incredibly hot, Dan, today. And you could tell that everybody was feeling it. Felt like Brian Daboll was being very judicious with certain periods. After certain team periods, he would have the guys take their helmets off and kind of go through slow walkthroughs. It was in shells today. Tomorrow, it's going to be a padded practice. So it's going to be exciting. But there were a lot of reporters sweating out there. And practice was also, I don't want to say cut short, but it didn't go all the way to noon. Typically, it does. It was cut short by about 20 minutes, if you want to phrase it that way. And then the media, we talked to some of the, we talked to Greg Van Roten and Bobby Okereke. Another important note, we typically do that inside so you can hear what the players are saying. Today, we did not because it seemed like the New York Giants were working out another offensive lineman because Carmen Brasillo and one of the guys from the front office and another coach went into the field house where the media usually goes to work out, presumably an offensive lineman. We'll probably hear about that in the coming days.
Well, that's interesting. The Giants are working out another offensive lineman. Wow, I don't know where that puts them at from a John Michael Schmitz health standpoint or an Evan Neal. Brian Daboll did say before practice that John Michael Schmitz is close to returning. Still no real update on Evan Neal, though. I think I saw on your Twitter or somebody else's Twitter that Evan Neal was running on the side, doing like little quick sprints. So
that wasn't my Twitter. Okay. I didn't see much of Evan Neal. I've seen him out at practice through previous practices. John Michael Schmitz, I'm not overly worried about. Greg Van Roten, who the Giants just signed, he ended up taking the first team snaps, and then Austin Schlottman kind of slid in there and assumed that duty because Greg Van Roten, he's slowly getting brought into the fold now that he just signed here earlier this week. But it does seem like Greg Van Roten, he has a chance to earn that backup center role. It's real. Again, man, we spent a lot of time talking about the offensive line, Dan, rightfully so, because there are a lot of different combinations and a lot of different outcomes that realistically can happen. A lot of it is contingent on Evan Neal's health. And I just hope JMS is back sooner rather than later, because if he's also down, that's going to throw a monkey wrench into this entire situation.
Yeah, because I guess like he can be operating as this backup center, and then ultimately, like, while JMS is out, he'll be, I assume, take more. Like I read he took 2 first-team reps at center, Van Roten, and then kind of chilled out, and it was Schlottman. Ultimately, I'm sure he'll take them all while JMS is out. But at the same time, if the plan is for him to be the starting right guard, which it's possible at this point, I don't know if it's likely, but it's possible. If they weren't at least considering it, then Runyon wouldn't be playing at left guard. He wouldn't have made that flip over. So obviously they're considering Van Roten at right guard, and I guess then Illuminor at right tackle. That's when things get tricky, though. It's like if JMS and Neal are back, we got a lot of guys competing for a few spots. And then also we would be saying that, they're working out more linemen. So I think at this point, I'll ask you this, Nick, before we get into a bunch of other things. What would be your ideal offensive line combination for week 1?
Ideal offensive line combination for week 1. Look, if Evan Neal's not back, I'm going to leave him out of this because I don't want Evan Neal, who has struggled throughout his career, to get thrown into this without a proper ramp-up period, possible re-injury. So I'm going to leave him out. I'm going to say it's Jermaine Illuminor, right tackle, Greg Van Roten, right guard, JMS, center, Runyon, left guard, Andrew Thomas, left tackle.
I'm right there with you. It's just a matter of this point, I feel like, of how much will the Giants value the continuity that they're gaining from having this lineup in. When we know at the same time, it's not really like an ideal lineup from a continuity standpoint, right? They don't have John Michael Schmitz on the field right now, earning those valuable reps, and who knows when he'll be back on. But, it's hard to build that rapport when he's not on the field. And then there's a little bit of uncertainty, I feel like, at the rest of really everywhere but left tackle. I just, one season, Nick, maybe one training camp, we're going to get this sweet, locked-in offensive line. Everyone's going to stay healthy, and we won't even have to answer these questions. But I don't know, man. I still feel this level of uncertainty.
I think New York Giant fans should feel a certain level of uncertainty until it's proven on the field. Because there were a lot of times where we felt, hey, we might have the solutions now. And then look what happens. The Giants, Daniel Jones running for his life the entire season. Right now, I feel better than I have since I've covered this team, as I said earlier. And this Greg Van Roten signing, I am intrigued by. I went through his film last night, Dan. I dropped the video on this channel. If anybody wants to go check it out, go check out Big Blue View as well. There's an article there about it. I was more pleased than I thought after I watched his tape. He's a functional player. I think he's someone who can start, and he's not going to be a complete liability for you. And he actually moves better in space than I expected. Please watch the video that is on the feed.
Yeah, he does move better in space than I expected as well, just given his build. It's funny how like the build can trick you because, I always thought Will Hernandez might be a better mover in space than he ultimately was. And then on the flip side, Van Roten kind of looks like he would be more of that thumper inside, but he can move. So just an interesting guy. I want to ask you, we're going to get to all of the exciting parts of practice, but I do want to ask you this. It seems to me like in the past watching training camp clips that there's been just ultimately, flurries of breakdowns from the offensive line, the first team unit. I don't feel like I'm seeing those as much this year. I feel like they're doing a pretty good job on a lot of these plays protecting. And maybe it's like, well, what are we making of that? Because we have a backup center in that might not play. We don't even know if the right guard's going to be starting or the right tackle. At the same time, it's like, okay, this is a good sign because we have depth that's stepping in and not making a fool of themselves and not blowing up these plays. Is that the feel you've gotten just from the practices you've been at? Not from what you've seen, just the practices you've been at.
Yes, but there's a large caveat, a very large
And
one.
what's that?
Dexter Lawrence practiced today, but he wasn't out there taking those first team reps. It was
Gotcha.
Jordan Riley. And I think that changes a lot if you get Dexter Lawrence against an Austin Schlottman. But
okay,
with Andrew Thomas and Brian Burns, I felt like Andrew Thomas did an excellent job against Brian Burns. There was a rep also where Andrew Thomas was against Kayvon Thibodeau that really stood out to me, where Kayvon got shut down. I saw Jermaine Illuminor just absolutely demolish Ryder Anderson, who was rushing around the edge. So I'm intrigued by this tackle play, but you put 97 in there, it could be a completely different story.
Yeah, you're right about that, and we'll see what happens there. I want to ask you a few things before we move toward like some of the highlights and the plays. Did you know? Give me a little breakdown of who is getting reps with the first team offense from the running back position, and then how they performed within those reps, and anything unique you might have seen from the running back position. Because again, this is a fun one that I think is open ended on the depth chart, and I want to hear more about it.
One of the team periods was 21 personnel. So it was Devin Singletary and Tyrone Tracy who were out there. And you saw some slip screens. There was a center screen to Devin Singletary. We also saw two tight end screens, one with the first team and Theo Johnson.
We've been calling for that for a while.
Oh, yeah. One with the third team and Tyree Jackson. So that's something that we should expect and can expect moving forward. I felt like there were a lot of short passes in this practice, some screens, but the main thing about the running back position that stood out was that 21 personnel usage, Tyrone Tracy being that second back. We saw a lot of Tyrone Tracy on the first team, and we also saw some Dante Turbo Miller on the first team, along with Isaiah McKenzie. They used an empty formation, had Dante Miller all the way out to the far side of the field, ran him on a quick slant, like a 2-yard slant over the middle of the field off of clear out, dropped the pass. He also had a drop with Tommy DeVito in the flat. So it wasn't a great look, but after practice, Dante Turbo Miller was with Daniel Jones and Darius Slayton working on drills, doing light sprints. I don't know if that's like an oxymoron, light sprints, but it makes sense to me, right? Like they were doing light sprints together, and also Darius Slayton was kind of teaching him how to catch the football as well. So that's something I wanted to note, that Dante Miller, it was hot again, right? Dante Miller's out there full pads with Daniel Jones, putting in the extra work. It's just, even though he didn't have the best practice, that is a positive development in his training camp portfolio so far.
Look how far we've come with Darius Slayton teaching people proper catch technique.
Right?
And it is funny, but at the same time, if you look at the work Slayton did last offseason, and his wide receivers coach posted a lot of this to Twitter, he worked on becoming a better hands catcher last offseason. It showed up on the film from the 2023 tape. He had made big strides when it came to catching the football. So I'm okay with that. I like that. And I love the teammate camaraderie there.
There was also a really good blitz pickup from Tyrone Tracy Jr., which
important.
Which intrigued me. Second and third team, Eric Gray was on that. Eric Gray, he did his job. It just didn't, as a pass protector, it just didn't look all that great. It was a defensive back who was blitzing, and they slid protection to the right. So Eric Gray was left to take that defensive back, and he shoved them out and up the arc, allowing Drew Lock to step up in the pocket. But it didn't look all that great, and he kind of missed the contact, but he got in the way. And Eric Gray also, I felt like, was a decisive runner today, had a rushing touchdown to end practice. So I wanted to tip my cap there as well.
I love a great deal as much as the next guy, but I'm not going to enter a parallel universe or go through some elaborate labyrinth just to save a few bucks. It has to be easy. No hoops, no BS. So when Mint Mobile said it was easy to get wireless for $15 a month with the purchase of a 3-month plan, I called them on it. Turns out, it really is that easy to get wireless for $15 a month. It's easy to switch to. The website has a good interface. I have a couple buddies who have recommended this to me. They speak highly of Mint Mobile. Get started, go to mintmobile.com/BBB. That is 3 Bs. There you'll see that right now, all 3-month plans are only $15 a month, including the unlimited plan. Plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all your existing contacts. Find out how easy it is to switch to Mint Mobile and get 3 months of premium wireless service for $15 a month. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/BBB. That's mintmobile.com/BBB. 3 Bs, triple B. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/BBB. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
You ever feel sluggish or out of focus? Are you stressed? Has your digestive system caused discomfort or flatulence like a certain co-host on this podcast during a live stream? If so, you should check out AG1. When I started drinking AG1 daily, I could feel a real difference in my daily health. I had more energy, I was better off at the gym, and I could focus on my work in a much more efficient manner. That's because AG1 is a foundational nutrition supplement that supports your body's universal needs like gut optimization, stress management, and immune support. Since 2010, AG1 has led the future of foundational nutrition, continuously refining their formula to create a smarter, better way to elevate your baseline health. Not only did I replace my multivitamin with AG1, but I love that every scoop also includes prebiotics, probiotics, and digestive enzymes for gut support. I recommend AG1 to all my family and friends because AG1 has a team of doctors and scientists that formulate around the latest science and maintains high quality standards within the industry. Even my friends have started drinking AG1, and they always tell me how energetic they feel and how it's helped them out at the gym, and also it's helped them manage their stress levels. That's why we're happy to have AG1 as our partner. If you want to take ownership of your health, it starts with AG1. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3, K2, and 5 free AG1 travel packs when you first subscribe. Go to drinkag1.com/banter. That's drinkag1.com/banter to check it out. Our mental and physical well-being is of the utmost importance. Whether you're a world-class athlete or a podcaster like me, we all need to take that very seriously. That's why I'm excited that Unified Healing is sponsoring this episode of the Big Blue Banter podcast. Unified Healing is a new and super innovative global network of wellness centers powered by Energy Enhancement System, or EE System. If you haven't heard of the EE System yet, you'll want to listen up. This technology promotes wellness, deep relaxation, purification, and rejuvenation. Whether you're here in New York, New Jersey, Arizona, if you will, or hundreds of other locations across the globe, access to a center is easy and affordable. Interested in experiencing the EE System technology for yourself? Go to unifiedhealing.com/banter to learn more and find a center near you. That's UNIFYD healing.com/banter. No material or testimonials on the Unified Healing website are intended to be viewed as medical advice or a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician
or other qualified healthcare providers with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment. And before undertaking a new healthcare regimen, include EE system.
Sounds like Tyrone Tracy, a rookie we're excited about. A nice blitz pickup, got some reps with the first team. Giants have mixed in some 21 personnel, as Nick said, which means 2 backs on the field at the same time. We saw a little bit of this when Breida was on the roster, more of it in 2022. Also, maybe, Turbo Miller's getting first team reps, Tracy's getting first team reps. Didn't really see Gray with that, but also he had a good practice running with the second team. So it will be very interesting to see what happens there and how that all shakes out. I'm most excited for Tyrone Tracy. I hope he grips it. I hope he has the preseason, and I hope he's the guy who plays a big role, especially when the Giants are moving toward no huddle and 2-minute offense and up tempo. I'd like Tracy to be the back on the field, even over Singletary in those snaps. I think it gives them an advantage. And if they could start to get this thing going with Jones developing a rapport with Tracy, he could become a really big weapon for him on those checkdowns right outside, because there's going to be here's the thing. Every offense has checkdowns in it, but now the Giants offense, when they check the ball down, there will be more space to work with because Nabers is on the field. That's just the general reality of it. And because Hyatt's on the field, this is the reality of the situation. Their speed is going to open up some space underneath. So if you can get a guy like Tracy for those checkdowns, running those routes, trying to beat those linebackers or oversized safeties in those spots, it's a good spot for the Giants. So I'm excited about watching his development.
Look, this is like the 7th day of training camp, and you see Tyrone Tracy with the first team.
Right.
That's an excellent sign. And the way they're using him, his role on special teams as well, he's going to be somebody we're discussing throughout the entire season. And just I want to touch on that special teams, because this was the first time we saw full kickoff drills. And the combination of kickoff returners was Gunnar Olszewski and Isaiah McKenzie, and then Tyrone Tracy and Dante Miller. Those guys are kind of dangerous when they get the football in their hands with this new kickoff drill. It's pretty cool to see. I have it listed in the article, all of the blockers, but it's going to be a lot different this year with the guys starting directly next to each other on these kickoff drills. And we haven't seen much of the full drill at all in training camp. And today they actually practiced it. One more tip on Isaiah McKenzie. He also worked in with some first team reps.
Yeah, he's somebody who's been forgotten a little bit because there's so much depth at receiver and so much talent, but he's somebody who made his way with the Bills, was a pretty electric player for them at times, and honestly had some moments with the Colts, I thought, where he was electric as well. It's kind of like that, Crowder, Beasley type that the Giants have been signing a bunch of times. Let's work through all the positions, though. Receiver-wise. Oh, by the way, one more note, actually. The kickoffs, I'm not excited about this preseason game tonight, the NFL's first game, because, no one's playing, not even Caleb Williams. Not even. That would have been the most fun thing to watch. But I am excited to see the kickoff. And that's the thing. We're going to get to finally see what this looks like full speed with players trying, because everyone who's on the field is trying in the preseason. It's just a matter of you don't put your starters on the field. So on that note, let's move to the receiver position. Who have you seen working with the first team unit throughout the team drills and receiver? Has it been a set group, or have they been rotating? What have you seen there?
12 personnel was Jalen Hyatt and Malik Nabers. 11 personnel, Wan'Dale Robinson would join that. They would sometimes switch it up and throw Isaiah McKenzie in there and take Wan'Dale Robinson off. That could just be to see how he looks in the Wan'Dale Robinson type role, which is a role that Isaiah McKenzie theoretically fits. Could just be monitoring the snaps of Wan'Dale Robinson, which they did with Malik Nabers 2 practices ago. But the consistent ones are the ones that you would think. It's really Darius Slayton and the 3 that I was just discussing in the 11 personnel package.
And have you noticed any difference between Hyatt and Slayton with the first team drills there? Has one been getting more than the other?
Nothing that's too glaring. I would say it's probably a little bit more Hyatt, but that also could just be because Hyatt is a younger player in his second season who is really kind of taking a jump from year 1 to year 2. And Darius Slayton is the seasoned veteran in this wide receiver room in terms of just being on the New York Giants. There are guys like Miles Boykin and Allen Robinson who are also long shots to make this roster. Boykin maybe not as much because he is so special to the special teams unit. And then Allen Robinson, he could be in a direct roster spot battle with someone like Isaiah Hodgins, who had a nice 12-yard out catch on the sidelines, but it came in the second team with Drew Lock. And I also think I saw him on third team reps. You don't see him with the first team like we saw so frequently in previous seasons.
Yeah, it's been weird with Hodgins ever since that 2022. He was really good, and it just seems to be phased out in a lot of ways. The Giants have added a lot of talent at receiver. That's calling a spade a spade. They drafted Hyatt and Nabers in that time since that's happened. So that's made a big role. Finally, tight ends before we move to the defense. I've heard Bobby Skinner talked about this, I think, in his on Twitter. He's like, Theo Johnson caught 2 passes today in team drills from Daniel Jones, a a check down and a nice seam pass. That one I want to hear your thoughts on. But in addition to that, I want to know, he said that was more catches than any Giants tight end has had from Daniel Jones so far. So our boy Daniel Bellinger never getting love from Daniel Jones. Hopefully that changes at some point from just target standpoint. We're joking around too, by the way, just to be sure. But what are your thoughts on Theo Johnson already working in with the first team?
I asked Mike Kafka before the practice what his thoughts on the tight end room was. He said he really loved the diversity of the tight end room. Just they have the blockers, they have physical players, they have guys who could stretch the field. He mentioned stretch the field. And I was like, So my follow-up question was about Theo Johnson and how impressed he's been or what he's felt about Theo Johnson. And he essentially said, we're slowly ramping him into first team reps because he just came off the injury. So we're monitoring him. But he said that he's not getting a full complement of snaps is what he alluded to, but he's already getting these first team snaps as a rookie. You think of the field stretching players. It's Lawrence Cager and Theo Johnson, I believe, are the two guys that he's referring to. Now, I think Daniel Bellinger can do that. We see Daniel Bellinger with first team reps, but we see him a little bit more as like a fullback whenever they want to go in 12 personnel,
right,
only in a 21 personnel type of look. So I think Theo Johnson is going to be a field stretcher. I think they are slowly working him in there. And he did have that catch. I don't know as much if it was a seam or if it was like a crossing type of route. Okay. Either way, it was in the middle of the field. It was a well-placed ball over the top of the linebacker. Theo Johnson's just gigantic. He just climbs a ladder. He plucks it out of the air and he secures the football really well. And I believe the check down that Bobby was referring to, I think he also had a catch on
the screen he was referring to.
But it was a screen. Yeah, it was a designed tight end screen. Theo did a good job blocking, release, caught the football, and there were blockers in front. It was well timed by Daniel Jones, Giants blockers, and Theo Johnson himself. I'm excited about the tight end room, man, because I have a lot of faith in Daniel Bellinger. Everyone who listens to this podcast knows that. But I think Theo Johnson, who I'm trying to talk to, he always has lifting afterwards, so I haven't been able to get an interview with him. I have a bunch of questions I would really like to ask him. And I'm going to try to do that with Daniel Bellinger as well here soon. Nice. But Lawrence Cager too, focusing in on this, man. It's a room that is very competitive, but as Mike Kafka says, very diverse. And I do think you're going to get some seam stretching ability from those three tight ends specifically. And what can you do when you have that combined with Hyatt and Nabers? It can really threaten defenses to not just ignore the middle of the field. So we've seen a lot of passes over the middle of the field with Daniel Jones in first team period.
Yeah, and that's where you win in the middle of the field in the NFL. The outside number stuff is fun. It looks great in training camp. It's open a lot in training camp. It's not open as much in the regular season. That's just the reality of the NFL. Quarterbacks live and die. The great quarterbacks live and die over the middle of the field. And that's just how it has been. That's why guys like Justin Fields have struggled, and that's why guys like Drew Brees have made Hall of Fame careers. Yeah. With that said, Theo Johnson, man, I got to say, given what we heard on Hard Knocks, and we got a lot of insight into their evaluation of him there. Given, what you said from seeing it in person, I saw a picture today. I think Steph Smalls put it out there of just of kind of scope of how big this dude actually is. He was standing next to like somebody who worked for the Giants. He's got the frame. He's got the speed, the seam stretching. I think he's got a really good chance, despite being a fourth-round pick, Nick, of playing a lot of snaps as a rookie. We already saw 2 years ago, the Giants are unafraid to play the tight end position, a rookie tight end, a day 3 pick, a fourth-round pick, Daniel Bellinger, on an absurd amount of snaps. Bellinger played a crazy snap share in his rookie season. That would have been crazy for a first-round tight end, given the historical precedent set at the position. Typically one of the hardest positions to learn and play in the NFL and transition to. But in this offense, maybe that's not the case, because Bellinger played right away. Cager got on the field almost immediately after they signed him. They got him worked in. And now Theo Johnson, already getting these first team reps, seems to be taking well to them. There's a really good chance he could play a lot of snaps this season and be a big impact player for the Giants. I'm excited about it because I loved my evaluation of Theo Johnson. He was my tight end 2 in the class. I said it in February on an FFT Dynasty with Heath, and I stuck by it, and nothing changed from watching more tape.
Positive development for Jack Stoll. He actually had 2 catches as well. Now they were with second and third team, but 2 practices ago when I was there, wasn't the best for Jack Stoll, so he was able to go out there and make a few catches, but he's seems to be clearly behind the other 4 tight ends.
All right, before we go to the defense, Nick, let's get to the story of the day. We did not bury the lead. We just kind of went in a weird order, and we saved the best for last. This is how I always eat my food, Nick, when I'm at like a restaurant. I always save the last bite's always the best bite. I'm one of those people. Some people are the opposite. They eat the best first because they want the food to be at its hottest and its best. I don't want to end, but I don't like that. I don't want to end my meal with my worst bite. I want to end my own with the best bite. So let's get to that. Daniel Jones had his best practice by far in camp, according to reports. I'll question you in a second on if that's true and if you felt that way. But from what I saw from the outside, there was a lot of time on the deep pass to Malik Nabers. Hopefully in a game, the offensive line can provide him all that time. But the angle Madeline Burke posted to Twitter, this was by far and away the best angle of that throw. I put it on I retweeted it, and I wrote a little bit about it. I tweeted it. The ball ripped out of his hand from that angle. I mean, he launched that thing and it picked up velocity as it hit Nabers in the hands. So I love that throw. And then the second throw for me was the one to Jalen Hyatt that got out, because that one was stood out to me. Yes, Bobby Skinner said, I believe, and I kind of agree with him, it took a little bit of time to get there, and it wouldn't have been a touchdown. It would have been just a big catch. But keep in mind the difficulty of the throw. Daniel Jones rolling to his right, has no time to square his shoulders, no time to square his feet, set his feet. He's throwing off platform, something we talked about a lot over his career, and an area he made major strides in 2022. And we talked about that. We broke it all down on our page, Nick. I broke it down on Twitter. And I'm seeing those strides carry over, at least on this throw to Hyatt, because that's not an easy throw. I mean, he's rolling right. He gets that thing out. He puts a nice spiral on it. He puts good loft on it. And more importantly, the ball placement. It hits the wide receiver, and he's able to make the catch. So those two throws stood out to me. I didn't see the Theo one, so I'll get your take on that. A few other throws were pretty much like short completions, easy completions, taking what Shane Bowen's defense gives him. That's fine as well, too. Obviously, the interception was not his best throw. I feel like he didn't really read that underneath linebacker well. And Okereke was kind of right there, but you can obviously give me your vantage point of that. But let's break down those four throws, and if you agreed on the take that this was Daniel Jones' best practice.
From the practices that I've been at, yeah, I would say this is Daniel Jones's best practice. Now, the play to Nabers, it's like, that's just pitch and catch. Cordell Flott flipped his hips before Nabers went into his break. Nabers went out. Cordell Flott flipped his hips back to the outside, and then Nabers went up, and Cordell Flott was beat by like 6 or 7 yards. So it's just get the football to Nabers at that point, where he did, and it was a touchdown. Now for Hyatt, that was busted coverage because of Malik Nabers. Malik Nabers was the number 2 wide receiver, and he just ran a quick stick route, flowed to the outside. That occupied Deonte Banks. Now, I don't know the coverage. It's hard to see. You don't know what the safeties are doing, but Deonte Banks, he bit on the Nabers, and Jalen Hyatt just streaked right past him. And then the next thing you know, Hyatt's just wide open, and Dane Belton's chasing to get him. Don't know if that was on Banks. Don't know if that was on Dane Belton. Either way, the ball was a little underthrown because, as you astutely pointed out, Daniel Jones, he just threw it off platform. So he had to wait a little bit. It hit him, and it probably wouldn't have been a touchdown. But still, ball got there. He recognized the blown coverage, and he delivered the football.
I just wanted to add this observation. One thing that we've said in the past, Nick, and I think you did a great job breaking this down last year after the Seattle game, and we both kind of observed this and then talked about it and broke it down in the pod. On some of those plays where Daniel Jones had escaped the pocket in his past, he had a tendency to keep his eyes toward the first down stick marker. On this play, the throw to Hyatt, he kept his eyes downfield, and that's why he was able to find Hyatt downfield on a busted coverage. And that's just something that I really appreciated, because we've discussed in the past, he needs to be a quarterback who's not looking to the sticks on these broken plays. He's got to start keeping his eyes downfield.
Yes, absolutely. And I just saw the play that you retweeted from Big Blue in the Bronx. It looks like Dane Belton, too, was really focused on Malik Nabers. So that could just be Dane Belton, who was supposed to take that deep half field. I didn't see that angle yet because I did not have a vantage point. I was behind the Giants like offense, right? So I was on the other side of the field, so it was hard to see exactly what happened. But yeah, it looks like Dane Belton just also was focused in on Malik Nabers, and it ended up being that blown coverage. So good job by Daniel Jones to get the football there. With the Malik Nabers one, look, Daniel Jones, he steps up into the pocket like 2 or 3 steps, and he delivers the football. It's catchable, it's a touchdown, and that's great. People have pointed to, hey, he steps up into the pocket too much because he doesn't have the arm strength to get it there. Look, Daniel Jones doesn't have the Josh Allen arm. He doesn't have the Patrick Mahomes arm, but he's still getting the football to places where they need to be if he does have a clean pocket, right? Like, this is who Daniel Jones is. This isn't new news to any of us. And he can plant on that damn leg, and he could throw it, and it's no issue. Kafka also talked about that before the practice. Now, the other play that you wanted us to go over, the Theo Johnson one, I already touched on a little bit, put it over the top of the linebacker. Theo climbed. And that's the great thing about having these tight ends who are absolutely massive, is you could put that football high, and you could trust your tight end to be in a position before the safety gets there. So you put a high over the linebacker and then just allow your tight end to climb that ladder and pluck it out of the air, and it's going to be a completion. And I think every one of the tight ends that we went over earlier, they can do that. Now, that other play was the interception that you wanted to go over, right?
Yes.
My take on those interceptions, because there were 3 interceptions over the middle of the field, one by each quarterback. All of them were tipped. We're in training camp right now. Daniel Jones, I want you to make that throw. You might not be 100% confident that you're going to be able to clear that linebacker, but test it right now. Get those live reps with Bobby Okereke there. There was a PBU that Bobby Okereke had on a similar play I think it might have been to Theo Johnson as well earlier in practice, where Bobby, it was tight coverage. The safety was bearing down. I went in Dane Belton bearing down on the tight end. Bobby Okereke undercut. And he tried to fit it. Bobby Okereke knocked it away. But I wanted to test those windows. That's what you do in training camp. It might not be completed, but guess what? You're learning how you can make these throws against live defenses, professional defenses. Better to do that now and in the preseason rather than in week one against the Vikings or week one last year against the Dallas Cowboys. So I'm always okay with these quarterbacks testing tight windows.
I like that take a lot. We've talked a lot on this podcast about challenging tight windows. So when we get it, we have to accept it and we have to enjoy it and look and hope that, next time the ball is fit in there. So I'm good with that as well. As far as before we move to defense, as far as the rest of observations on the quarterbacks go, from my vantage point, I think there's been, at least so far, a pretty clear drop-off between Drew Lock and Tyrod Taylor. I think the Giants have really downgraded at QB2, so I think it's no surprise to me Daniel Jones has taken almost all the first-team reps. This is no competition. Drew Lock is not going to play football for the Giants unless the Giants lean on that injury guarantee thing at some point in their season with Jones. And there's just no real argument from what I've seen. Now, you can be seeing a completely different thing because you're live there. And I think if Tyrod was here, the story would be different. I think there's a reason Tyrod's not here, honestly. And I hate to say it, but I don't hate to say it. It's the truth. Tyrod, I don't think felt like this was his best fit, because I think in Tyrod's mind, if he goes to New York with the Jets, it's like, I am behind Aaron Rodgers and I accept that. Here, I'm sure he felt like I could kind of compete to be the QB1 here. And I've proven it on the field in the actual real game. So is what it is on that front. But my take is that Drew Lock is of no competition to Daniel Jones. And I want to hear your take on that. And then also Tommy DeVito, another player, their QB3. Has he done anything to show you that he's going to earn the third roster spot? I know he said earlier this camp, like, the Giants better be careful. If they let me go, someone's going to claim me off the practice squad. I find that very hard to believe personally, that any team is going to roster Tommy DeVito after him not being in camp, not knowing their system, not working with the receivers at all. He is not the kind of talent that you have to rush to grab to add to your 53-man roster and then risk losing a special teams player. So I think there's no risk for the Giants to put him back on the practice squad. But I'm curious what your takes are on both Lock and DeVito.
No, I'm the same way. I'm in the same exact boat. Now, with Lock specifically, he holds on to the ball a lot. Now, he uses his mobility. There have been a lot of designed quarterback runs for Drew Lock in the second team. He tends to flow in the pocket, allows his wide receivers to improvise. I think a lot of those plays would end up being sacks. Now, he's playing with Josh Azudu as his left tackle. So we have to keep this in mind. He's playing with a pretty poor offensive line. Now, he's not going up against Dexter Lawrence, Kayvon Thibodeau, and Brian Burns. Sometimes Aziz is out there, and there are some talented guys on the defensive front who can create pressure. So I always want to make that clear. But to me, Daniel Jones is the quarterback of this team. Daniel Jones, to me, everything I've seen in camp suggests that Daniel Jones is the number one quarterback. And I know there have been reports by certain outlets saying like, oh, Drew Lock should take first team reps. Look, if you want to say he should take first team reps just in case, because Daniel Jones has an extensive injury history, that's fine. That makes sense. That's logical. But if it's because Daniel Jones is just playing like absolute shit because Drew Lock is killing it with the second team, that's not accurate. It's not. And as for Tommy DeVito, he had a really nice pass over the middle of the field to Bryce Ford Wheaton. It was just a quick little.
Yeah, I saw that. Was nice.
Yeah, it was a quick little horizontal crossing route, or it might have been a dig, and it was over the linebacker, and it was a really good throw. Now, he's Tommy DeVito. I think he's going to be practice squatted. And I think he'll get through the waiver process and the Giants will stash him on the practice squad. And that's going to be what happens. I don't think the Giants are in a position right now with all the talent that they have on this roster. And as Shane Bowen said, there's going to be good players on defense who are going to get cut. And I agree with that. Players who actually have value, whether that be defensively or developmental or special teams. And I don't think their roster spot is going to be used on a third quarterback, even though the Giants have an injury-plagued starting quarterback.
I'm with you on that entirely. Though I do think DeVito does use the middle of the field pretty well, like when he wants to, and he fits that intermediate range nice. I will say this about Locke. He struggled a lot in camp. You've talked about he's played with this really bad second-team offensive line. In addition to that, the positive side about Locke, because I don't feel that great that he's the QB2 when the QB1 has been injured as often as our QB1 has been. I'm just going to be honest about our QB situation. It's almost to the point where it's like, okay, should I worry about if Jones gets hurt again? Which again has happened every year but one. Are the Giants just effed, like back like Jake Fromm days effed, and Mike Glennon days effed? And what brings me back, Nick, is the idea that, okay, I did just watch Drew Lock have a really good game to beat the Eagles last year. And that was before the Eagles were in their collapse mode, and had a pretty good game, I believe it was against the Niners that I watched the tape of. And then maybe it was the Cardinals. So in actual regular season games, he's been better, Nick. But it doesn't make me feel like it felt with Tyrod. I always felt like Tyrod was capable and competent as a backup. Not so sold on that. Let's move to the other side of the ball. I'm going to start backwards here because that's what's being talked about most with the Giants secondary. There's a lot of concern that has been going down with the Giants secondary. I tweeted out earlier, Nick, that, and I meant this, like, it's almost insane and absurd to me the amount of separation I've seen Malik Nabers create so far in training camp. We're talking about 4 to 6 yards on some plays, and it's consistent. It's every day. Some people replied, Nick, and they said, just how bad is the Giants secondary then? And how bad is this Giants secondary? We heard on Hard Knocks the Giants were not happy about not being able to land a cornerback too. They made that clear. So this is something that's on their minds as well, the cornerback two position. Are you as and we're going to get some other stuff in the second gear. There's a lot to talk about. I want to talk about Shane Bowen saying Dane Belton, it's his job to lose at safety, Newbin getting his first snaps, all of that. But before we do that, let's stick on corner. Are you as worried about the corner position as these fans are? And where are the Giants at? What have you seen? Is it more just the receivers are awesome at separating, or is it these corners have big issues?
These corners have big issues. We've been talking about this for months, since last season, essentially. You have Deonte Banks. If something happens to Deonte Banks, the Giants are absolutely screwed. Yeah. And Deonte Banks right now is a good starter, I would say, but he's not like a Patrick Surtain. So you're talking about losing, a good player, and that would just absolutely decimate your entire 2024 season at this point. Because Cordell Fly is your starter outside right now. I like Nick McLeod. I hope Nick McLeod seizes that. It seems like every time I see 44 out there, he's making plays, Dan. It seems like he is coaching his teammates up. He seems to have the right chip on his shoulder, and I want him to earn that spot. Cordell Flott, a lot of the plays where Malik Nabers is making these highlight reel catches that are going around Twitter, it's always against Cordell Flott. Now, he had the one against Deonte Banks, but that was actually good coverage and a great play by a great player in Malik Nabers. Yes. But these ones where the separation is just insane, it's against Cordell Flott. Yeah. And that's like, that's a bad sign, because this is a rookie, a very talented one, yes, but still a rookie, and you can't even stay within the same stratosphere of this guy. So yeah, Dan, I am concerned. And the Giants went out and they signed someone off of the Eagles waivers, or somebody who the Eagles waived rather, and that's Mario Goodrich, who was undrafted from Clemson. A lot of people thought he would be like a high day 3 pick, but he came in like 178 pounds. Right. And I don't know if he was great in his meetings, but he didn't have terrible tape at Clemson. So the Giants are going to bring him into the fold now to see if he can crack a roster spot being a young player. It probably is more of like depth and a camp body. But at this point, if you just go out and have some good plays, like David Long Jr. had a good practice on Monday, I believe it was. He had 2 PBUs, and that just at least made me be like, I know he has slot and a boundary experience. I was like, that's a name maybe to jot down. At this point, it's like, if you just make plays in training camp and you show competency, there is somewhat of a path to starting reps in this defense. And that's frightening, dude. That is absolutely frightening.
It's frightening. I mean, we knew Rome wasn't going to, I'll quote my favorite GM of all time. We knew Rome wasn't going to be built in a day. When the Giants tried to revamp this cornerback and secondary here. They got Newbin, they got Drew Phillips. They did the best they could. That's a 2nd and 3rd round pick. Some would say get Gilmore, get one of these veteran corners. But there's a reason these guys are still on the market. It's because they're waiting for a major injury to a contender team, and that team is going to give them a lot more money than the Giants are going to be willing to offer. Right now, the Giants are offering very low deals, in my opinion, to these veteran-type players. Even the one Van Roten got was not a big deal. And Van Roten said today, look, it helped for the Giants' sake that I'm a Long Island native, my wife's from Long Island, and we have a 1-year-old, and we didn't want to move around. And that makes a lot of sense to me. I don't know if there's any other corners in that position. Adoree Jackson's the one that comes to mind the most for me, man. I'm not sure what's going on that front, but to me, there's obvious connections why Adoree Jackson would sign here. So the fact that he hasn't, to me, Nick, is that he's following the path I laid out, that he's waiting for a major camp injury to another team that's willing to spend what he deems his value is worth. He's not going to just play at a value the Giants provide him. He has a value set for his mind, and that's the value he's going to play at. And maybe if it's September and he's still not getting offers at that, maybe then he'll take the $2-3 million or whatever he's going to get offered from the Giants.
If I'm Adoree Jackson, I'm not re-signing with the Giants for really, really cheap. I think he has more left in the tank to do that. And he has connections around the league. He knows people at this point. So one other thing too, you brought up Greg Van Roten. He said he had other offers as well. So that's another reason why he was available. I'm imagining a lot of that was on the West Coast. He probably felt like he would, because he said that he had contact with the Giants a couple weeks ago. So he probably Carmen Brasillo's here, Jermaine Illuminor's here. Their offensive line, not that great. I can maybe be patient with the Giants and I can go back to Long Island and be around my family and my wife's family now that I have a 1-year-old. And it all worked out for him. And I hope it works out for the New York Giants and him professionally. But as for corner, man, I just corner's a different position to find.
Well, yeah, but completely agree with you. And not that O-line's been easy to find for the Giants either, but corner is really devastating. Like, you mean the Giants have done a decent job with it over the years with McLeod and with the kid they got a couple years ago that worked out really well for them. I don't know why I'm blanking on his name, Moreau, and they've done okay with it. But and when they have, Nick, it's been later. The signings have come later. So I still think that's in play, like a September signing or a very end of August signing at the corner position. But it's a tough position to play in the NFL.
That's exactly what it's going to be. If they don't, they might sign somebody, soon, but there's going to be, if they're not confident after the preseason games in that corner room, they're going to be poaching players.
And one thing to keep in mind, by the way, on that front, Nick, sorry, I didn't want to cut you off. It just came to my mind. One thing to keep in mind on that front is last year, the Giants made the playoffs. They won a playoff game. They didn't have a high waiver priority. This year, they have the 6th best waiver priority.
Yeah.
So that's going to give them an opportunity to make a big play. That's how they got Pinnock. That's how they got some of these guys they really like on the roster. So just keep in mind, they're going to have that 6th waiver priority. I would assume they use it at corner. We don't know for sure, but I would think that's well in play. Let me ask you a 30,000-foot view on corner before we move to safety. And this is actually not on corner. This is on the secondary as a whole. In years past, when I've studied this team and reported on this team, I'm thinking back to James Betcher's first year as defensive coordinator for the Giants. There's been situations where there's just been communication breakdowns, and the secondary really takes a while to learn the system, and it's a complicated thing. Is it possible that we're seeing these massive separations because it's taking a little bit longer to learn Shane Bowen's system? Because I thought, and I can't see it, I can only see from the clip online, I thought the Hyatt play was just a pure communication breakdown. But from what you've said, it's more just Malik Nabers taking the attention away.
I think it's both.
Okay.
Yeah, I think maybe Malik Nabers' presence caused a communication error, but yeah, there's certainly been breakdowns in coverage because of Shane Bowen, just because you're learning a new system. Now, Shane Bowen also was on the sideline today screaming at the defensive players because of substitution issues. I don't know, maybe it was somebody on his staff that's in charge of that. So they're working out the kinks, they're ironing things out. I'm more so looking at the dearth of proven talent on the roster at the cornerback spot. I'm more intrigued by the safety position right now, especially with Shane Bowen saying, hey, it's Dane's job to lose. Dane has been here. Tyler Nubin needs to earn that job being the rookie. Ultimately, I think Tyler Nubin is going to play a shit ton of football for the New York Giants, but I also feel like Dane Belton might. Could be some sort of rotation between those 3 safeties. And although none of them are these proven stars, I think it's at least a solid core. It makes me feel better about them rather than, even though Tyler Nubin just practiced once so far, I really respect Tyler Nubin's game rather than this cornerback situation where I'm like, I don't know who the nickel is. I don't know who the starter opposite of Deontay Banks is. I hope Nick McLeod figures into this somehow. There's just a lot of question marks with the corner room.
At safety, before practice, Shane Bowen said it's Dane Belton's job to lose. Obviously, this staff is very much so higher on Dane Belton than the last staff, at least in my opinion, based on what we've seen and what they've said. I'm for that. I've always liked Dane Belton. He was my sleeper breakout last year, and he didn't really get the playing time, in my opinion, necessary. What do you make of the safety situation right now?
I think Tyler Nubin will end up earning a starting role, but I think Dane Belton is going to play over 20 snaps a game. I think there might be some sort of rotation, especially in passing downs. We saw a dime package to start the first team period today where Bobby Okereke was the only linebacker out there. And then it was Flott, McLeod, Dane Belton, and Andrew Phillips out there. So I think you're going to see some of those lighter packages and those obvious passing downs and those obvious passing situations. Then I think Pinnock is also going to be a player who's going to be more of your strong safety, who's going to blitz a little bit and who's going to roam center field as well. And I think you're going to see Nubin. I think it's going to be a solid situation so far with these safeties, but still it's a little bit unproven. And when you don't have strong corners, it's going to put more on the plate of the safeties.
Well said.
Yeah, it's tough. And then there's the linebacker spot too, Dan.
Well, let's move down in. I want to, before we get to linebackers, I want to get to the kind of in between. There is one in between player, Isaiah Simmons. I saw in your notes that he's been actually working with the second and third team defense. Did he not get any first team reps? Is he down with the second and third team consistently?
Now they were playing in dime. So on that first team period, I'm not certain if he earned first team reps today. I think he may have, but he was with the third team and he was with the second team. I wouldn't overreact to this because I think we understand that Isaiah Simmons isn't more than likely going to be a first team defensive guy. He's going to have a niche role. Now they might try him at nickel. I think ultimately it's going to be Andrew Phillips' job or Nick McLeod's job, depending on how things shake out. Money backer, passing situations, big nickel. That's where Isaiah Simmons is going to factor in. He's gaining reps, valuable reps on second and third, but he's also gaining some of those at linebacker, which I don't think the Giants are going to play him at too often. So I wouldn't read into it too much. I think Isaiah Simmons is safe and he's going to make this roster. But the way we have to look at Isaiah Simmons is he is the player who is playing for this contract, whatever it is, small, like what, 1 year? I don't know what it is. 1 year's $5 million. That's who Isaiah Simmons is. We have to stop thinking of Isaiah Simmons as this former top 10 pick, and he's going to live up to that hype because that's not who he is right now. He has a valuable role, I believe, on this defense when the Giants do have a lead, but he's more of a niche player, and I don't think he's ever going to be somebody who's going to live up to that top 10 potential.
Okay, let's move to linebackers. One thing I've observed, Nick, that I really like is that Bobby Okereke has done a really good job of getting his hands and being in passing lanes and understanding where to be in passing lanes. This is something I thought he showed a great job of on tape at times last year. It was a big jump, I thought, for him within Wink's system. And I'm like, how is it going to translate to Bowen's system? That tip pass he had against Daniel Jones today that led to an interception, that was awesome. Like, that's what I want to see. How about the guys behind him? Because that's the interesting situation right now because Micah McFadden dealing with a little bit of an injury, slow to start. And we're seeing somebody else step up and play really well in his place to the point where we're like, maybe this linebacker group will be look a little bit differently from a playing time standpoint than we really expected for week one.
Really could, man. Deontay Johnson earned a first-team interception off the tip pass. Deontay Johnson, Bobby Okereke was asked about him after practice, and Okereke said, reminds me of me from a build standpoint. He's big, and he's long, and he heaps a little bit of praise on him. But you see him move around out there, and all that checks out. Like, he is big, and he is long, and he looks like he belongs. I'm not saying Micah McFadden's job is being threatened, but when you have a young player, a second-year UDFA, earning snaps, coming away with takeaways in training camp practice, and you're not really an overly proven player being Micah McFadden, and there is a new defensive system, yeah, maybe it's a little bit of time. Is like when I do get back full reps, I need to strap up and be ready because Deontay Johnson, he wasn't somebody we were considering really earlier in the summer, earlier in the spring as, hey, this guy might make the roster, right? Earning first team reps, having success with them in a position that doesn't have a lot of talent or a lot of depth, it's a great spot for Deontay Johnson to find himself in.
Very interesting. He's probably the biggest sleeper so far from Giants training camp, so definitely a player to keep an eye on. Let's wrap up with defensive line, and then your final thoughts that we didn't get to. That could be across any position.
Yep.
So defensive line, thoughts on what you've seen so far there?
Defensive line, look, Jordan Riley was playing for Dexter Lawrence. I don't really have too many like key takeaways from today's practice with the defensive line. I felt like the offensive line did a good job blocking them up, but
That's good to hear.
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit earlier on. I think that would have been a lot different if Dexter was out there.
Well, yes. All right, let's get to some overall thoughts we might have missed. Just anything from practice. Even I think the fun stuff, if you want to get to, give fans like an insight. No, seriously, like what it's like to be there, right? Like at practice, covering the team. Like anything you pick up on, anything interesting, just walking around, looking at things, talking to people. I do honestly feel like the fans would appreciate that insight.
First, let's stick to just the practice, and then we'll go over that. Aaron Stinney earned some first-team reps as well. Josh Azudu earned his first guard snaps.
Thank God. Put him back.
But it was second team. But yes, he did at least show his face as an offensive guard. Alex Johnson, the UDFA from UCLA. He played corner at UCLA. He's a safety. He had 2 interceptions in this practice. Both of them were off tips, but hey, you find yourself in the right position. You're in the right place at the right time. We know that can go a long way. Dean Belton has made a little bit of he has a solid career doing that so far, even though it's very early on in his career. So Alex Johnson is another player I wanted to tip my cap to. And Eric Gray, we saw him catch a nice wheel route up the sideline. That's good development for Eric Gray. And yeah, I think that is about it.
Now, that was a good ball from Drew Lock, by the way. That wheel route was really well timed.
Yeah, it was a well-timed pass over the top. I don't know who was in coverage, but yeah, there's some interesting formations the Giants are using now. Interesting personnel packages, and I love that Turbo was at least used in first-team reps, although he didn't necessarily shine in his first practice receiving those first-team reps.
Sure. Okay. So any thoughts from just being there now a few days and just getting to know people and walking around the facility, things like that?
Yeah, you gain a lot of perspective being there, and it's the little things. It is like the personnel groupings. It is and then there is conjecture to it, right? Because again, sometimes people earn first team snaps to see if they can sink or float, right? Float or sink, right? But I think there is a lot of value in just being at practice and seeing the players interact with each other, the players interact with the fans, the coaches interact with the players. You see certain mistakes sometimes. You see just certain interactions between the players. You just gain a little bit more perspective when you are actually up front and freaking right next to these gigantic.
You have like a little notebook out there, Nick?
Of course, man. I'm writing notes all the time. It's in my backpack right now, but I have like, 5 or 6 pages of absolute gibberish that I can hardly make out, but I try. And then
you don't have the best handwriting. You have what happened there?
I've always had the worst handwriting. I don't hold the pencil.
What's that about?
So I don't hold the pencil correctly.
Okay. No.
Yeah. My entire life, every teacher has tried to correct the way I hold the pencil. And they gave me those stupid little grip things that I always felt like sucked. And they were very uncomfortable. And I felt like they were giving my freaking fingers arthritis because my fingers are like this. I hated those grip things. So like whenever my teacher would give me those grip things, I was like, no. And then I just held it my way, which utilizes the thumb to stabilize it. And then I'm able to write it. Like I'm not like, doing this whole thing, but it's my own freaking way. And that's how I learned. And
thumb stabilizing. I'm trying to even picture how that would even work.
Like, yeah, I don't have a pen.
What does this like carry over? Do you know like how are chopsticks for you?
I'm really good with chopsticks.
Okay, so it doesn't carry over. It's just writing with a pen.
Yeah,
it's just writing with a pen. I've noticed this about you. Excuse me, but most things you don't have trouble with. I feel like from what I've noticed in life. So I feel it's like your one kryptonite. Your handwriting.
My handwriting's tough, man. It's always been tough. I don't really have a lot of artistic ability either, so that's something else that kind of bites me in the rear end. But you know what? I'm able to make it out so that somehow, and that's all.
It's funny because like this is just a quick anecdote for the listeners. Back in the day, like back in the day, I mean like 2 years ago or so, or 3 years ago or so at this point, Nick and I used to do this thing where we would like get high and hang out together and then have like high Giants thoughts where we like were just like baked out and like we came up with some of our best takes and our best thoughts. We're always like, well, one day we'll release it. But I feel like part of that was maybe handwritten. I don't remember fully now. And I feel like those notes are lost, like the lost tapes now. We don't have those high thoughts anymore. Like they're gone. Just
the high thoughts will still persist, but they're just not put pen to the paper.
Yeah. One day we'll release the high thoughts if we can find them. We always thought that might be decent content. It was always such a funny thing that would happen. Cause like, I always talk about this. Sometimes another one of my friends, one of my best friends, like we will hang out and we'll have a plan. Like the plan will be like, and I'm a nerd, so I'll just admit this. The plan will be like, all right, after dinner, we're going to play like 3 games NCAA against each other because we love playing NCAA football against each other. And then we'll get high and then we'll get into like an hour and 15-minute conversation about sports. And it's just like, by the end of that, we're like, shit, we only have time for like 1 game now. Like we had this whole plan for like 2-3 games. So it's just like funny how that can derail you.
Have you played the new NCAA?
I have not yet. I want to. I don't have what I need, Nick. I still have like an old PS4 basically, which is embarrassing, but true. I don't have them bought like it is what it is. Like, I'm not going to buy a system just for 1 game. And I don't have time. I don't play video games ever. I use my time to do other things. So, like, it's like if you don't have time for it, you're wasting. It just feels like a big waste of money to me, just for me. If I had time, hell yeah, it would be a great use of my money. Because during the pandemic, Nick, on the old PS3 or 4, I played the old NCAA game. And I started, like, I had so much time. I started, like, multiple dynasties. It was freaking awesome. I do something that's really funny. I recruit players and I change their positions. One of my favorite things to do in that game, like make a fullback, a linebacker, or vice versa. So
this is a full virgin conversation.
Oh yeah.
I have taken the Marshall Thundering Herd, and raised them from the depths of hell to the top to win an NCAA championship.
I love that. I don't know
Marshall's
why
always my team, man.
Oh, that's your team. Okay. I like it. All right, we've done enough off Giants here. We're going to get killed from the comments from talking about non-Giant stuff. But the good news for you is it was all at the end of the show. So like you could have just paused and gotten out of this if you didn't like it. So enjoy. Everybody have a great rest of your week. We will talk to you soon, and go Giants.